Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode number 316 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Lindsay. Lindsay just passed the year mark in her grief journey, so it is really still quite fresh and raw for her, as all of us who are grieving know. I know you will just get so much from listening to her and this interview. I also wanted to thank her for being a sponsor of this episode. I didn't realize she was going to want to be a sponsor, but she asked me right before the interview started if she could sponsor this episode, and I, of course, said yes. So thank you so much, Lindsay, for sponsoring this episode. So again, if you would like to contribute to the podcast, feel free to do so. The easiest way is to just go to my website, andysmom.com, and go to the donate page. I do appreciate any donation that I get because it really is going to help us be able to do so much more and reach more people, and I can do different things with the money that I was just using for production costs. So like buying bracelets and handing them out to bereaved moms and just being able to do more special things that I really felt like I couldn't do before. So I appreciate those monetary gifts more than you can even imagine. Also, if you want to share your story on the podcast, feel free to email me at Marcy, M-A-R-C-Y, at andysmom.com. Right now, though, I just want you to sit back and enjoy listening to Lindsay, Chasey's Momma. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for agreeing to come on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Thank you so much, Marcy, for having me.
Yeah, it's great to be able to talk to you. We emailed way back at the end of June. Got this set up in the beginning of July, and here we are recording in September to be releasing in October. So it's a long little journey that we've had, but I think it's working out all for the best.
Yeah, yep. I've been listening for a while, so I kind of have gone through in my head what I think I'm going to say. And
okay, very good. And I know that when we started writing, you were kind of hoping for a recording in September. You weren't quite ready to go right then. You wanted a little time. So it did work out really perfectly, the timing. But I just want to hear all about your little guy, Chase, right now. Or Chasey. You call him Chase or Chasey, right?
His birth name is Chase Michael.
Uh-huh.
Affectionately called him Chasey. I have an older son, Jack, who's almost 4. He'll be 4 in November. So I think it was just easier for him to say Chasey. So that's kind of what we settled on.
Isn't it funny how that ends up happening? The siblings will say something and then suddenly that ends up being the name a little bit more, right?
Yeah, Jack and then my mother-in-law, they're Portuguese, and I don't know, it was easier for her to say Chasey as well, so she always called him Chasey. So he's
now
I
love that. I love it. Okay, so tell me all about him.
Okay, so I kind of want to start talking about my partner Mike and I and just our family, because I think that's sort of what has helped us to just survive this, just being our family. I met Mike later in life, and we both kind of just hit it off. We grew up 2 streets away from each other, but we never really dated or anything in high school. And then, like I said, later in life, after we had established our careers and everything, we reconnected, and our first date was January 8th, 2021. And then it was, right in the midst of COVID. And then I delivered Jack, our firstborn, on November 4th, 2021. So
Wow.
we really didn't waste any time. We really knew that we wanted to be together and wanted to have a family. And
isn't that funny how sometimes when you're ready, you're just ready?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I felt like kind of like that with Eric. We started dating in September, and by Christmas, I knew that I was going to marry him. And he told his best friend he was going to marry me. And the next year in December, we were married. So sometimes I think, especially when you're a little bit older, because we're not old, but we were like 25. I mean, we weren't young anymore. And you just kind of have a different mindset if you're just looking for a life partner.
Yeah. Yeah. We were mid to later 30s, so we were older. But we had our son Jack. That's our firstborn, and he was a firecracker. He was a tough baby. I think had some sort of colic or silent reflux because he screamed for like his whole
Oh my gosh.
Never slept, and he's on the move at all times. So then, we wanted to give him a sibling. So we had been trying for about 6 months, and I feel like I was a little older, and then you kind of just stop taking pregnancy tests until you're like, wanting to be sure that it's positive because you're sick of being disappointed. So it was actually Father's Day, and I put on a dress and I popped the button. So I put on a different outfit, and it was very unflattering. And so we go to my mother-in-law's, and she puts her hand on my belly and she says, "Are you pregnant?" And I said, "No, I'm just fat," because I didn't think I was pregnant. And so then a few days later, I took a pregnancy test, and it was the faintest positive. And so I was so excited, but I ran to the grocery store and got the digital and took the test in the bathroom of the grocery store.
Oh, did you? Oh, funny.
Because I couldn't wait one more second. And then it was pregnant, and I FaceTimed Mike from the bathroom of the grocery store to tell him that we were going to have a sibling for Jack. So we were over the moon, excited and happy from the minute or before he was conceived even.
And you could say then, in all honesty, yes, I actually was pregnant. I am pregnant.
Not just
fat.
Yeah. And so I had good pregnancies with both my kids. Mike might say otherwise because he would always say, "I get the sense that you don't like being pregnant." And I said, "No, I love growing a baby. It just comes with some side effects that you're not used to." So my pregnancy was very good with Chase. At my 20-week ultrasound, everything looked great in terms of Chase. He was fine, growing, had all his organs. But the radiologist came out and told me that I had complete placenta previa, so my first pregnancy, I had a C-section with Jack because he was breech. And so the previas were, I'm sure you know, but the placenta is inserted sort of in an abnormal place. It's supposed to be more high up on the uterus, and instead it's completely covering like the cervix, where theoretically, if you had a vaginal delivery, the baby would, go out that way.
Right. And it's hard because then the placenta almost needs to detach to get the baby out. But if the placenta detaches too early, then it's just a horrible risk of bleeding. And mothers can die with placenta previa. It's very, very dangerous in general. So you really have to do a C-section delivery with that, and just be careful.
Yeah. So it gets a little worse. So he then told me, because you have the previa, you're at high risk for an accreta, which I work in a NICU. And so I knew what an accreta was, and I knew it was very risky for the mother. And it's where basically the placenta then grows through the uterus, and the blood supply is abnormal. And like you said, the risk is when you deliver, if they don't know about it, you can have uncontrolled hemorrhage. And I think, of course, I'm a numbers person. So the past maternal mortality rate, I think, was about 7% of people, which I think has come down now with better technology and better management. So
still, 7% is really pretty high.
Yeah. So that really put a lot of stress on part of the pregnancy. I had to be on pelvic rest, and things like working out and things like that I just didn't do anymore because I was too afraid of the bleeding. So I really wanted to keep Chase and myself as safe as I could. I had to have an emergency plan. If I had any bleeding, when I went to the bathroom, I would have to immediately go to a delivering hospital to be evaluated to make sure, like you said, that my placenta was still intact and there wasn't like a bleed going on. Thankfully, I did not have any of that with him. I always say he was just such a good boy, literally from the moment he was conceived. I felt like so bonded with him, and I would always say at my ultrasounds, he's such a good boy. Like, he's just behaving himself. He's not putting me in preterm labor. I'm not having any issues with bleeding. Like, I just felt very lucky in that regard. I ended up transferring my care to, we live near Boston, so a good hospital out there where somebody that was really specialized in Accreta would be able to deliver me.
Because there's a big risk of losing your uterus when you have to go through this too, because you have to go through a C-section. And obviously if that bleeding starts, they'll need to take the uterus. So that's what's scary too. It's not just that pregnancy, it's moving forward.
Like you said, the main treatment for placenta accreta is a hysterectomy if they can't stop the bleeding when they deliver you. So, but just a side note, we get pregnant and then we found it's another boy. And so we're very excited. Mike never had a brother growing up, so he was always wanting to have brothers, 2 sons. And so he was just over the moon that he was going to get, Jack and Chase were going to get what he never had. And he loved the name Chase, so I said, let's name him Chase. So about 7 months into the pregnancy, he comes to me and he says, so I think we should name him Joao. And I said, Mike, this is Chase, and I've been bonding with Chase for 7 months, so well, Chase, not Joao. We already had a Jack, and I'm not really sure why he wanted to change the name, but yeah, I quickly vetoed that because I was very set on Chase.
And it was his choice to begin with.
I know, that's what it was. So then I had to have a planned delivery at 36 weeks or so. They don't want you to go into natural labor with Accreta because obviously they don't want you to deliver vaginally. You have to have a C-section. So we had a scheduled C-section date. It was February 2nd of 2024. And I love that. It was 2/2/24. So everything went well up until that point. And it was supposed to be like maybe a 2-hour C-section, and it ended up being 6 hours.
Oh my word. Wow.
Yeah. I guess I had like a lot of adhesions. Yeah. She said,
I mean, it must have been kind of a mess.
Yeah. She said she had never seen anything like the inside of my abdomen, I guess, with the adhesions. I've only had 1 C-section, so I'm not really sure why that was the case. And coming from a very experienced doctor, that was a little frightening to me. But I think the first time I heard him cry, everything was worth it, Yeah. So I delivered, and it has the drape where you can see them right when they're born. So I heard him cry, and I was just so happy. And then I could see him until they cut the cord and brought him over to the warmer. I actually delivered at the hospital that I work at. And interesting thing, after he was born and I knew he was okay, this voice inside my head just said, you have to protect this child. Like, you must protect this child. And I didn't know what that meant, but it just really stuck with me that I had that thought.
That is interesting, huh?
Yeah. It's just literally like the first thought. Like, I literally remember laying there on the table with my arms strapped down and Mike beside me and just thinking this as soon as after I heard him cry. He was wonderful. He was good size, but he did have to spend some time in the NICU, which was where I worked. So I was okay.
You were more comfortable with it than probably others maybe, right?
Yeah. It was literally all of my best work friends took care of him. I knew there wasn't a second he would go without care because they all loved him so much, and that was really comforting. I did have a complete hysterectomy with him, which I was fine with. I had told the doctor, whatever keeps us both safe.
Yeah.
So that, I just wanted us to be safe.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So he was just pure joy and pure love from the moment he was born. I remember going up into the NICU after my C-section, and he was on CPAP, which helps him keep pressure in his lungs. And the nurse was like, "Do you want to hold him?" And at first I was like, no, like let him rest, whatever. And then she's like, "No, here, you're holding him." And I just remember this like little naked body with a diaper on flying through the air on my chest. And it was just like my whole heart was just broken open with love. I never really worried about loving a second child less. I feel like with my first child, I didn't instantly love him because I didn't know what it was to be a parent. I didn't know all the fun times we were going to have. But with Chase, I just instantly loved him because of Jack. I knew all the joy we were going to experience and all the love. And I just was so grateful to be able to do this again and to be a mom of 2 children. And so we spent our time in the NICU. I had lots of, like I said, my friends caring for me, one of my favorite nurses. I would love to do skin to skin all the time. And she would always, she was one of his primaries or the nurse that takes care of him all the time. And she would say, "Can you put some clothes on that boy, please?" And I would always just say, "Nope, we're doing skin to skin." I just always, he was just always on my chest, even as he grew, just always right on my chest. So he came home after about 3 weeks in the NICU. So he was born on February 2nd. He came home on February 19th. And I just felt like we were a family now.
Yeah.
We had our dream and we were so complete. I always told Mike, I think I might have bugged him to adopt like a little baby girl once Chase was bigger, but our natural family was complete, our biological family. He was great at nursing, even being a little early. I thought maybe, oh, he might struggle with this a little bit. Nope, he just, from the first time he got on, he was just amazing. I had nursed Jack until he was 20 months old, and it was funny because he would still get up. Jack would still get up like 3 or 4 times a night to nurse at 20 months old. And all my friends at work were like, "Oh my gosh, he's just cuddling. He has no nutritional need for you to nurse at 20 months old multiple times a night," which was true. But
100% true, yes.
But I had no way to say no to him. He's a very strong force. And so I just soaked up all the cuddles. And I just thought with Chase, I'm going to nurse him until he tells me he doesn't want to nurse anymore, whether that's 2, 3, like, I don't know. I don't care. I just loved nursing him. So we came home and we got into our routine. I think when you have a baby in the house, Chase just, he made everything better. We would wake up in the morning and look at him in his bassinet and talk to him and sing to him. And when we brought him home, Jack was 2 years, 3 months. So he was still, a little guy himself. And I just have so many beautiful home videos of us talking to Chase, and he would just smile, this big gummy smile. He was literally the happiest, best baby on earth. He loved to sleep, unlike his brother. I always say they were complete opposites. Like when Jack was born, he looks very much like his father, like Portuguese, dark hair, dark eyes. And I remember when Jack came out, I was like, whose baby is this? Like, I have blonde hair, blue eyes. Whose child is this? And Chase was just, he was my twin. We went to the grocery store one time and some guy came up to us and said, "Ma'am, that baby's your twin." And I just was like, yep, he is. I always say, I think you said this with Andy, like there's one child that you're just really connected to, and that's your child. And that's how I felt with Chase. I just felt like he was my soulmate. He was just so similar to me, and he brought me so much peace and calm. So we would wake up in the morning and nurse and do our thing, and then we would go out in the kitchen and I would put him on his play mat and he had a little piano play mat that he would kick. And so he would kick, kick, kick and make his noise while I got Jack settled. And around this time, that song Tipsy by Shabuzi was out. And so Jack loved that song. So we would have morning dance parties where Jack would dance and Chase would be in his seat And Chase would just throw his head back in laughter, just so in love with his brother. I always say they always were looking for each other. They were always, so Jack would then go to daycare. He was in daycare 5 days a week. And it just really gave Chase and I so much one-on-one time to not have a 2 to 3-year-old to have to care for as well. I was able to have 6 months off of work, which was really nice because of the hysterectomy and everything. When I picked Jack up from daycare, he would always say, "Is Chasey here?" And then we look over in the car seat and I'd say, "Yep, of course Chasey's here, Jack." And then he'd get in his car seat and we'd carry on. So, like I said, Chase and I would just spend the day together. My parents live close by, so we would go. They have a development where we could walk, and so we would just walk, and it's a 55 and over community. So we would always say that Chase would go mingle with all the old ladies because they were all out on their porches, and he was this beautiful little baby in a stroller, and they all wanted to see him and talk to him and touch him, and he just loved that. He loved being outside. My mom used to call him nature boy, our little nature boy. So we would always put him on a blanket in her backyard and he would just stare up at the trees, and we have a back deck and he would just be out there all the time. We were able to take him on his first little mini vacation. My sister has a place in Rhode Island, and so we were able to go there, and we have a picture with his feet in the sand and toes in the water, and just, yeah, just beautiful memories that we have. He was just starting solid, so I felt like he was going to be such a good eater. He was really loving them. I said, I think he's going to be bigger than Jack. His legs longer, his bones look longer. So I thought he was just going to be bigger and strong. And I always said he was like the type of kid that I could picture him as he got older. When I said, like, "Chase, can you do this?" And he would be like, "Okay, Mom, I'll go do that," whereas my other guy is kind of like, "Yeah, no, I'm not doing that." And like, you might get a toy flung at you, but Chase was just the most sweet, sweet baby. I just want to kind of physically describe him a little bit. He had this little tuft of blonde, fluffy hair. He had crystal clear blue eyes. He had just flawless skin. I feel like since birth, he never really had like baby acne or anything. He just had this perfect skin. He had this big round belly. His legs were getting chubby. His dad, Mike, used to call him Mr. Chubby Legs. And their little hands and feet, his little feet were getting so soft and kind of doughy. I would take pictures of his little toes. And one of my favorite memories that I shared one of the pictures with you is his baptismal day.
Yeah. Love that picture.
Yeah. We're Catholic, and so we wanted him baptized. We did it. It was on his 4-month. He was 4 months old on June 2nd. And it was a super hot day. I think it ended up being like in the 90s that day. So,
wow.
Yeah. I guess in Portuguese culture and tradition, the godmother buys the baptismal outfit for their godson. So Mike's sister was Jack's godmother, and then my sister was Chase's. So we already had this baptismal outfit that his sister had bought for Jack. So I'm not going to go buy another one, so we're just going to use Jack's outfit. It was a little different than I would have picked. I always picture like we were baptized in these like flowy dresses, boy or girl, just sort of unisex dresses. But his sister bought this, literally, it's like an 8-piece suit. It's like, I don't know if it's satin. I'm not sure what it is, but there's a bow tie. There's an abdominal binder. There's a suit coat. There's socks.
Oh, that's so fun.
It is like so much. So Jack was baptized in the winter, but poor Chase had a summer baptism. So they did the full mass because after COVID now our church sort of does the full mass, and then the baptism is separate with just the families after. So they did the full mass, and then I hadn't had him in the outfit then because I knew it would be too stuffy. And then we're in the little crying room. And so my sister says, "Let's go get Chase in his outfit." So I'm like, okay. So we go, and this poor child, we're putting him in this like 8-piece suit. It's 90 degrees. The clothing is just sticking to him. And my sister said, You could tell he was just the best baby in the whole world. He did not fuss for 1 second. He was just smiling. He was beaming from ear to ear. He was so happy everyone was there. Actually, his obituary picture and the picture on his headstone are from his baptism in that crying room before we waited. So it's just this radiant picture of him, just like completely describes his personality, just always happy. He was the most precious baby. Another strange thing that happened was I remember 2 weeks or so before he got sick, my head just kept telling me, tell Chase you love him. Tell him you love him out loud. Like, he knows you love him, but say it. Tell him. Just keep saying it. So I just vividly remember like something telling me to tell Chase that I loved him. And
I just feel like those are somehow little gifts from God that we get. Because I had that too. The weekend before Andy died, we were all in the boat together, all cuddling together, watching fireworks, and it was cold and we were under blankets. And I remember having this thought, cherish this moment. Remember this moment, because it's not always going to be like that. And I thought in my head it was because in 2 years, my daughter would be graduating from high school, and they were all still small enough to kind of cuddle together, and they wouldn't do that. But that's not why God gave me that thought, I don't think. I think God gave me that thought because, well, actually it was a week and a half, because a week and a half later, Andy was going to die. It's just a little gift. You got that thought 2 weeks before, tell him you love him.
Yeah.
You didn't think because 2 weeks from now he's going to be gone. I mean, that never would have crossed your mind.
No.
But you did appreciate the thought, just as I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remembered it, and I really acted upon it. I just kept telling him out loud that I loved him so much. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk now about what happened when Chase got sick?
Yes, I can do that. So we had COVID in July, which is a very strange time to have COVID, but obviously it happens. And yeah, it was just very strange. Jack woke up one night and he was just kind of like wheezing or struggling for air. And so I just was like, this is so out of the blue. You went to bed fine, and now all of a sudden you're like, in your bed. So I took him to the emergency room that night because why did this just happen in the middle of the night? It's not normal. And then they literally swabbed him and said he has COVID. And so
there was that strain, certainly, I think, around then that was giving littler kids with COVID pretty significant croup. So that's, it changes all the time. That COVID illness is always changing. But I do remember when the kids were coming in with croup from COVID. So that's what he had, certainly.
Yeah. And so, just like you've said on the podcast many times, I felt like I did everything right. Chase was fully vaccinated. Our whole family was fully vaccinated against COVID, against flu. I got the RSV vaccine when I was pregnant. Chase was exclusively breastfed. All the protective things that you're supposed to do so that it doesn't get sick. And unfortunately, like I've heard you say, you don't have control over.
No, you think you have more control than you do.
Yeah. So Jack had COVID, then we all ended up getting COVID. I felt like Chase did well with it.
Yeah.
We didn't really have any crazy symptoms. We didn't need to go to the hospital or anything with that. But he did have a lingering runny nose, and then he had a very intermittent cough. I'd say sometimes when I'd put him down at night, he would have this little cough. And so I just kept an eye on it. And then I brought him back to the pediatrician 2 separate times because he had fevers. It was typically just a very random fever. Like I said, he had no new worsening symptoms. He wasn't retracting. He wasn't wheezing. He was okay. He was nursing fine. He was peeing. He was pooping. He wasn't vomiting. But those 2 times I did take him to the pediatrician. The second time was 10 days before he got sick. And I've read through the notes and it said I reported a fever of I think 102.9, and I said he was miserable overnight. And they did send us for a chest x-ray that they said was normal, but they didn't really do any other workup for him. And then, like I said, we were going along, and then it was about a month after we had COVID. We had gone on a trip to Maine, and he was fine. He was splashing in the pool. He was active. He was sleeping normally. He was waking up to nurse all night. We came back from Maine on Thursday, and then Friday was to be his first ever day of daycare. So he had never even gone to daycare. The only people he were exposed to were his close family and his older brother who was in daycare. And so he went to his first day of daycare, and it worked out that we have this wonderful babysitter who she babysits for like cops and people, and I leave super early to go to work, and my boyfriend, he does as well. He's in construction. And so we had asked her if she could come 5 to 7:30 usually, so we could leave at 5 and then she could bring the kids to daycare. And it just so worked out that she wasn't able to. So Mike did get to spend basically his last normal morning with Chase, which I felt like was another blessing because she rarely says no to us, to babysitting up for us. And so he said Chase was fine. He was playing with him, and then he went to wake up Jack. He put Chase on his back, and they were just having a beautiful morning. He brought him to daycare. The daycare provider sent me a picture of him sitting up in his bouncy seat at around 7 to 8 a.m., looking happy, smiling. She didn't report any issues. She did have to close down early, unexpectedly, and so my mom picked the boys up at daycare. So that was around probably 11. Then my mom started texting me. I was at work, unfortunately, and she said,
And so had you just gone back to work? You'd not been back very long, or?
yeah, like 3 weeks since
Yeah.
maternity leave had ended. And so she texted me, Chase feels really hot. I think he has a fever. And so your dad's going to get him some Tylenol because they didn't have any Tylenol in the house, infant Tylenol. And so I said, okay. And she said he's quite fussy. And I said, when he gets a fever, he typically was pretty fussy. He was literally the happiest man on earth until he got a fever, And so they went and got him some Tylenol, and that seemed to be okay. And then I texted her around 2 maybe to say, Mike's parents can probably watch the kids if you need a break, or, if you want to swap off with them. And my mom said to me, I'm worried about Chase. He's gotten a little lethargic. And so as soon as she said lethargic, I just was extremely worried. I just said, what do you mean he's lethargic? And she just said, well, he's just not acting like himself. He's acting really tired. And so we came up with this plan, and we said, okay, we're not even going to go to the pediatrician. We're not even going to go to anything else. We're going to just go straight to the children's ER next to us. So that's what my mom did. She went to the children's ER, and unfortunately, I think he was a little misdiagnosed. And I really feel that modern medicine kind of failed Chase, which is really heartbreaking, being that I'm in the medical fields too. The ER physician, his working diagnosis was dehydration for Chase, and Chase was septic and had bacterial meningitis.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. I feel like where I work, if a baby looks at you cross-eyed, you do a complete septic workup and start antibiotics, and you jump on them. And even before I went back to school and when I was a nurse, I learned that it's one thing you can't miss. You can't miss sepsis or meningitis because it's fatal. And it's fatal fast. And so his initial plan was to do an LP, and I was leaving work at this point, so my mom was sort of relaying everything. They had sent off a ton of labs on him. They had started an IV, but unfortunately, they just did not give those antibiotics. And when I got to Chase, all I can say was that I was just in complete shock, like complete shock. It was not the baby I had left at 4 a.m. and nursed at 4 a.m. It was completely different baby. He was so pale, which, as you know, like sepsis, their
Yeah, I know.
gets awful. And he was so lethargic. He would barely open his eyes. I think, I'm not sure if I tried to nurse him at some point during that initial ER time. And my mom had said that too. That was part of her concern earlier when he had the fever, was just like, he won't take a bottle for me, and then I was texting the daycare provider, like, did he eat for you? And she said, yes, he had a full bottle for me. So I at least had known that he had taken something that morning. And so, unfortunately, I just think we got a really inexperienced person in the emergency room who didn't know what they didn't know. That was that Chase was very, very sick. And I had been to that ER before. I had seen attendings, and I don't know why there wasn't an attending with us. It was a fellow, and it doesn't matter. A resident could have picked up sepsis or not. It doesn't matter, but I think if an attending had saw Chase, I don't think they would have let him go even an hour without antibiotics. As I said, like when I was first a nurse, if we had concern that a baby was septic, we would mix the antibiotics ourselves. We wouldn't even wait for pharmacy to do it because it was that time sensitive. And I just kept voicing my concern that the two things that are most concerning to me are his mental status and his color. And I said they're both absolutely atrocious. They're both completely not his baseline. I showed him a picture of Chase like 48 hours earlier on vacation with us, pink, hands in his mouth, happy, smiling, just to try to tell him that, like, this is not my baby. Something is critically, critically wrong here. When he was floating the idea of dehydration, I just kept saying, I cannot buy dehydration. Like, he hasn't been vomiting, he hasn't had diarrhea. And I said, he's been eating all week, he's had no dry diapers. You either have to have no
Well,
input.
and he has a fever too, didn't he? Have a
Right.
fever
He had
too?
a fever and he was very lethargic. And sure, I guess if you're dehydrated for a few days, you might be lethargic, but a baby that was sitting up in a baby carrier a few hours earlier
Yeah.
is now flaccid and won't wake up to eat, won't open his eyes. Like, that's a drastic, drastic change. And
It's just so scary, and you're right. It's just so fast. It's just so fast.
well,
I remember very specifically a kid that I took care of in the peds ICU who the parents, I remember the parents saying all the time, they kept saying, he did his paper route this morning. He did his paper route in the morning and he was dead by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, it's
well,
just so fast and so scary.
yeah. And it's so unfair.
Yeah.
It's so,
Yeah.
like, I think, I'm in the nursing field, and I just always thought if my child got sick, I could recognize it and I could help fix it. And it
Yeah.
just was so fast. And like I said, I don't think he got the right treatment. He didn't get antibiotics for about 8.5, 9 hours,
Oh, yeah. Wow.
which I didn't realize at the time. I thought once he got the antibiotics, like, we were going to be okay. And there might be sequelae, but we would deal with that. But it didn't pan out that way. So the ER physician, he didn't do the LP. He transferred us to a floor. On the floor, the doctor told me, was it like 8:20? I'll never forget some of the words I heard in the hospital. It was like 8:20, and she told me that her shift ended at 8. My kid was critically ill. I don't care if your shift ended 15 hours ago. Like, get me someone that can help my child right now. So she went home. She didn't give him antibiotics. She didn't do an LP. And then they wanted to scan his head first to make sure he didn't have a bleed. And meanwhile, he's just becoming more and more, his heart rate's going up. He's becoming more tachycardic. I know he's spiking a fever again. So I call them in, and then I think they started to worry more about the infection, even though we had come in with a fever and lethargy. So they did scan his head, and then they did the LP. But like I said, I think it was just too late. They ended up transferring us to the ICU that night. I'm so unhappy with the care that he received. The attending physician didn't even come in to see him that night. He wrote a note from home. He's a 6-month-old baby with bacterial meningitis, and he wrote a note from home.
Wow.
And then the next day, which was Saturday, everything spiraled out of control. I have, like I said, as you can tell from my interview, I just have so many qualms about what happened.
Yeah.
They thought he was seizing, but they didn't have an EEG on him. So I don't know, just from my experience with babies, the ones you think are seizing are typically not, and the ones you don't think are seizing typically are. I think it's like a very subjective thing to say if a baby's seizing. His foot was moving a little, and I put my hand on it, and it stopped, which I've always learned is, if you can stop the movement, then
You
it's...
can't stop a seizure with a hand. Yep.
Yeah. So I didn't agree with the attending, but she was going to treat him for seizures. So she did that. And then she decided to electively intubate him, which is just another thing that we don't really electively do. I understand she was trying to protect his airway, but the intubation didn't go well. And it took multiple tries, and they ended up paralyzing him, which I didn't realize. Basically, everything was just happening in slow motion, but so fast, nothing could stop this horrible progression of what was happening. And so at that point, they wanted to scan his head again because they were worried that he might have brain damage. I think his coags were off. So they were worried about bleeds and stuff. So his initial head CT on Friday was read as completely normal. And then his head CT on Saturday had anoxic brain injury. So at that point, I decided I wanted him transferred to Boston. And so we did that. I felt like at the very least, he was going to need neurology follow-up probably for his whole childhood. And so I just thought, let's be in a major city. And so they sent a helicopter to transfer him. I think at this time, I think his brain was already starting to swell, giving him medication for that. So we went on the helicopter, and he just did not tolerate it at all. His heart rate immediately shot up. I don't know if it was safe for him to be in a helicopter with what was going on, but that's what happened. And we got to a children's hospital, and his pupils were fixed and dilated.
Yeah.
And as soon as she said that, I knew what that meant.
Yeah.
I couldn't really wrap my brain around what that meant, but I did.
Yeah.
Well, they told me to sleep a little because it was going to be a hard day. And so we just spent that day with him. His dad, Mike, was able to give him his first haircut, which Mike cuts Jack's hair. So, yeah, so he cut Chase's hair.
Yeah.
It had all the stuff in it from the EEG leads at that point. So it's this dark hair, and I just look at it and say, like, where's my fluffy blonde hair? We did handprints and things like that. My parents and my sister came. We laid in the bed with him for a long time. We have a spiritual religious advisor, mentor. I actually met her through my job. She comes and visits some of the really sick babies. And so my friends, without my knowing, just knew that Chase was really sick, and they texted her to come see us. And so she came, and she split like the Eucharist and gave it to Mike and I and Chase, so he was able to have, she put it right in his mouth, some of the Eucharist. So that was important for us. And then I had asked if we could withdraw his care outside. Basically, they said that his brain damage was so severe that he would never recover. We didn't want him to suffer anymore.
Right. So horrible.
Yeah. He didn't deserve that. So they had approached us about organ donation, and sometimes I wish that we had done it, but we couldn't really stomach the thought of him being cut open or things taken out of him. Same with the autopsy. Sometimes I wish that maybe we would have done it, but on Friday, you're packing your kids' lunch for daycare, and on Sunday, they're asking you if you want an autopsy and to donate his organs. You can't wrap your head around it at all. So we didn't do that. We just kind of wanted him to be whole. And so then we went out. They have an outdoor patio. It was a little tricky to get us out there, but they brought us out there and we removed his breathing tube and just held him. Yeah. It was awful.
It is awful.
Yeah.
It is awful.
Because as a nurse, I mean, I've been in so many of those rooms where I'm helping other people do that,
Mm-hmm.
And I just never, ever could imagine that it would be me.
No. You just can't. You just can't put yourself there.
Yeah. I held him for quite a while, but I knew that I couldn't look at him. I've seen babies that have passed, and I just wanted to remember my happy, precious baby. Oh. Yeah. And I knew that I couldn't stay there for a super long time because I felt like I would probably never leave if I did. So we held him for a while, and then my brother was flying in from Florida. He had never met Chase because he lived in Florida. And so he met him after he had passed away. And so my mom stayed, and my mom helped Chase until my brother got there, and my brother could hold him and meet him.
And it's been just about a year now, right?
What?
Yeah. So talk about your grief journey and what that's been like for this year.
Yeah, so I think especially having a small baby, every cell in my body was looking for every cell in Chase's body. My body just could not wrap its head around the fact that Chase was not there. I was still producing breast milk. Chase, like I said, was such a wonderful nurser. I think when he got sick, he was like 17 pounds. So he had tripled his birth weight in 6 months. When we would nurse, some kids will grab your necklace or something. He would always just grab my hand and just hold my hand while he nursed. And so I weaned myself within a month. And I kind of look back on that and I think, I don't even know how I pumped. I don't know how I set my alarm at night to pump for a baby that I couldn't give the milk to anymore. And so I knew right away that I wanted to donate my breast milk to some milk banks around here. And because I work in the NICU, we use the breast milk all the time to it helps prevent something called necrotizing enterocolitis, which is an infection of the baby's belly. And it's been shown that breast milk is more gentle and can help prevent that in preemie babies. So I knew that Chase sort of wanted that. Chase to help other babies. And so I was able to donate his milk shortly after I had finished pumping. They have sort of like a bereaved tree, I guess, at the milk bank where they put the baby's name on a leaf, and they have a whole tree that's bereaved children that have donated milk. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. So I knew with my grief that I just would have to go completely through it.
Yeah.
I knew that I would have to feel absolutely everything, even if it was horrific every second. Like, that's the only way I could do it. And so that's what I've done. I was very fortunate that my coworkers donated a lot of time, so I was able to stay out of work for 6 months. I appreciate hearing your experience with trying to go back to work because at 6 months, I felt okay, but I probably could have stayed out longer. And then there are people that say like, oh, it'll be a good distraction. There's no distraction.
I think especially because of what we do for
Yeah.
a living. Like, you take care of infants for a living and your infant died. I mean, it's just different.
Yeah.
Just like me, I saw teenage boys all the time and these families all the time. It feels like a little twist of a knife in your heart when you see kids that remind you of your kid. I just feel like it's different.
Yeah.
Then it can't just be a distraction when oftentimes the distraction makes you think of your own child, because that happened anyway, right? That happened before.
Yeah.
That happened when you were working. You would see a baby and go, oh, that reminds me of something Jack would be doing or something, right? Those things come to you throughout the day. I will see a kid wearing something and think, oh, my kids would have loved to wear that when they were little. You're always thinking of that, those little reminders.
Yeah.
But suddenly those little reminders don't bring a smile anymore.
Yeah.
They bring tears,
Yeah.
right? And then it's, am I doing my best work when I'm having those kind of reminders?
Yeah. Where I work is where Chase was born, and so it's bittersweet, obviously. I remember parking my car the day we delivered him at 5 a.m. and taking a selfie outside the hospital before we delivered him. So all these beautiful memories and just his birth and everything was so beautiful. But then my hospital's connected to the hospital where he passed away. So it's just so triggering. I can't even really look up at the sky, because when it's a nice summer night, and I'm immediately brought back to when we had to say goodbye to him.
Yeah.
I have found a lot of support in a local organization called Empty Arms, a bereavement group. It's in Massachusetts, and it's sort of infant and child loss, but more like younger. So they deal with miscarriages, terminations for medical reasons. They have different groups for everything. I'm in the infant and toddler loss group, and then also parenting after loss. So I will say that I think one of the biggest challenges has been parenting a 3-year-old while grieving. It is some days it feels utterly impossible. I grieve the fact that Jack will be a different child because of what happened to him and what happened to us.
Yeah.
I grieve the loss of the mother that I was. I still think I'm a good mother, but I know that I was a really happy mother, and I'm not always really happy now.
Yeah.
And obviously, I grieve the loss of the relationship between Jack and Chase that they won't get to experience. When we first came home from the hospital after we had to say goodbye to Chase, Jack was only 2 years, 10 months, and he wasn't even 3 yet. And I just remember we were outside and he was playing and he said, Mama, where's Chase? And I said, oh, honey, Chase got really sick, honey. And I said, we couldn't save him. He was really sick. And he said, so that means we're not going to be able to see Chase anymore? And I said, yeah, honey, that's what that means. We're not going to be able to see Chase. And he just said, oh, like he completely understood what I was saying. And we talk about Chase all the time. I have this necklace, which is Chase's footprints. They did this at the NICU when your baby's there, and they gave it to me, but I didn't have a reason to wear it because Chase was right in front of me, and why did I need to wear his footprints, Immediately after he passed away, I put his necklace on, and I always used to sing, "You Are My Sunshine" to him. And so I feel like immediately after I lost him, anytime I missed him, I would just start singing the song. And now when I go to his grave, I just sing it. I'm very spiritual as well. I feel like I know I get signs from him and I know he's around me. And I read when you're singing, it brings the spirit energy closer to you. And I just found that so interesting because it was just my only coping mechanism after I lost him to just start singing to him. And it just makes me feel nice that like it may be bringing him closer when I do that, and I didn't even know the reason. I don't know if you know the Nancy Tillman books. Have you heard of On the Night You Were Born?
Uh-uh. Oh,
Well,
no.
okay. So they're beautiful, beautiful books. So On the Night You Were Born is basically just about everything in heaven celebrating the night like this baby is born. And it's just a really beautiful book. But another book that I always used to read to the boys is Wherever You Are, My Love Will Find You. And literally the first line of it is, I wanted you more than you ever will know. And then it says, so I sent love to follow wherever you go. And then it basically, I mean, I can recite the whole book, but it basically says it doesn't matter where you go in the world. You can go swimming, you can climb trees, you can grow up, you can march in parades, and my love will always be there with you. And then the last line is, you are my angel, my darling, my star, and my love will find you wherever you are. And so I just love that book. Yeah, you really have to read it. I mean, you'll be in tears. And so I decided on for his birthday every year, February 2nd, I'm going to donate 70 of those books to the NICU where I work. And I actually have one right here, but I have his picture in it and a little saying about him. But
Wow.
yeah. And so we put them at all the babies' bedsides in the NICU, and we really encourage parents to read to their babies when they're in the NICU because it helps with brain development. And so my friends will always text me, oh, my family's reading Chase's book to them. And so I feel like in some small way I can share him with 70 families that would have never known him before.
Oh, and what a beautiful book and a beautiful story. I love that.
Yep. Yeah, I
Wow.
used it in my eulogy for him. And I actually emailed the author, Nancy Tillman,
Uh-huh.
to try to get a discount on the books, but
Uh-huh.
she wasn't able to because the publishing company owns the books. But she said that she used that book to eulogize her father as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
But she didn't think about when she wrote the book, was it about around death
I
or
don't
not really? I mean, it doesn't sound like it probably was, right?
know. It doesn't, I don't believe so.
Yeah,
But
because it's talking about when you grow up or wherever you are.
yeah,
But I love the way that you have interpreted that all the way to heaven,
y-
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, more recently on his 1 year, we did a blood drive, which you can now do a virtual blood drive. You used to have to sponsor it and find a location and they would set up there, but you can do a virtual blood drive now. So, because when I delivered Chase, I received blood. And then when he was sick, he ended up getting one transfusion. It was very late in the course. And so I just felt like it would be a nice way to honor him and remember him and to do something good for other people. So, people can just sign up any date and time they want, and then it sort of like links back to who you're donating for, and then it lets me know who went and donated and stuff. So we had a goal of 50 donors. We only got 25, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Feel like if I do it every year, maybe every year, if I just get one or two more donors, eventually we will
Sure.
reach our goal. And so, yeah, I just have
I love
been.
that. You're
Yeah.
doing some beautiful things in his memory.
Yeah. I think the thing that's most important for me is just like sticking together as a family. Sometimes when we're doing things, and I know the most profound thing anyone has said to me, I think it was just 4 words, and it was, he should be here.
Yeah.
And I there's so many layers to that, and yeah, it's just so plain and simple that he should be here. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. You're 100% right.
So I try, like I said, to just love our family and remember and honor and love Chase. stay connected to Chase. And I always think Chase would be so proud. That's what I always say in my head. Like, we do something as a family and he should be there with us. I just think like he'd be so proud of us right now,
Yeah.
I want to just be locked in a room somewhere in the dark, but he'd be proud like we're out, doing something fun that he would have loved. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing Chase with us today. It really was a joy to hear all about him. And a wonderful, wonderful baby.
Thank you. Yeah, he was precious. Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation, or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.